It's time to take a ride on the Steelers Afternoon Drive with our co-hosts, Alan Saunders and Zachary Smith.
Welcome back to another Steelers Afternoon Drive. I'm Zachary Smith. That is Alan Saunders. Alan, different backdrop for you today. Where we at?
We are in Mobile, Alabama, Smitty, at the 2025 Senior Bowl. Got a little Airbnb situation. The place is really, it's nice. The great thing about Mobile is that you can be sure that your house will be extremely festively decorated. Like, these people are serious about their, like, Mardi Gras and the theming of – and so, like, every house I've ever been in has just, like, bonkers decoration situation. So it makes for good backdrops, I guess. Got, like, a peacock going on here. I don't know, some orchids and some fancy glasses. I don't know, whatever. It's working.
Yeah, I can't lie to you. Been to Mobile a couple times for Senior Bowl. I replied to your tweet today with a picture of Veets, which if you've ever been to Mobile to the Senior Bowl, you know about the Veets scene. So I'm a little jealous of you being down there right now. But we'll dive into that conversation, in the coming days in terms of the Senior Bowl and just what's going on down there. But Alan, big story coming out of today, or stories, was that Art Rooney was going to be speaking, and just curious as to what he was going to have to say. Our Aaron Becker for the site was obviously there. You were not there, being that you were in Mobile. But I feel like some stuff to take away from that we can dive into. Could be the entire episode. We'll see where it takes us. But was there something like immediately that stood out to you? Because we can dive into everything that was said, but like just in terms of the bullet points that came out of it, was there one thing that you felt like was the major headline to take away, or no?
Yeah, I felt like it was very interesting to listen to Art say that he feels like quarterback is the number one priority for the organization, that the teams that are still playing because of their success at the quarterback position. And then also that they're probably going to bring one of these two guys back this year. Like, it's very much to me, like, it's just an acknowledgement. It's like, we don't really got it. Like, I mean, he didn't come out and say it, but like, he kind of came out and said it, right? They're like, we're talking to these two guys. We're probably going to be one back. And the biggest problem with this team has been quarterback. Well, why are you going to bring but I mean, he's not wrong. There isn't a better choice, but I just felt that it was the disparity of those two things was very evident, that he was very clear that the biggest problem with the Pittsburgh Steelers is not coaching, is not the draft approach, it's the inability to figure out what happens at the quarterback position. And he was also clear that either Russell Wilson or Justin Fields is going to be their starting quarterback in 2025. So I have no idea how he didn't say it, but he's kind of logically acknowledging that the quarterback problem is not getting fixed this offseason either.
Did that acknowledgement surprise you to any degree, that he would be as transparent about that being the reason that the ship sunk?
No, because there's no other logic. There's no other way to justify the combination of actions, right? There's no way to justify keeping Mike Tomlin and keeping the quarterbacks given the results. Like, the only way to really say it is like, we know these guys aren't the answer, but the answer is probably coming next year. Sorry. Like, in fact, he even said, I think we'll be active in the draft this year and next year. He's already planning on being active in the draft at quarterback next year. Like, that's not exactly a lot of faith in the quarterback options for 2025.
Yeah, no, absolutely. You kind of said within there your opinion. I know that we've kind of touched on this, whether it is Justin Fields, Russell Wilson, assuming that's going to be one, not both of those guys back. You're in agreement that probably is the best path for them in 2025.
I mean, I think it's a logical one. I don't know. I'm not really sure I know what the best path is. I think it's the only path that aligns with their values that makes any sense. I'll say that. I don't think they have any interest in tearing it down to the studs and tanking. I don't think they have any interest in replacing large pieces of a coaching staff that's under contract and changing the fundamental what's the word I'm looking for? Like the way the team is. They want to be a running team. And so like there's things that they could do, but those aren't things that they would do. Of the things they would do, this is probably the thing that makes the most sense. Yes.
The identity of the team, still wanting to run the football. He brought up that as well and still said, like, that's where he feels like they can have success in this league, especially playing within this division. It's interesting because you look at, we've talked about kind of the value of that position, maybe a shift taking place in the NFL based off what we've seen this year from Saquon Barkley, Derrick Henry, and those likes. But like the thing is, whether if that's what they want to be their identity, they're going to have to be a lot better at it than they were this past year. So, there's kind of like a identity crisis, if you will, within the Pittsburgh Steelers, in that if that's what they want to be as a football team, well, you better be better at doing it than they have been over the last couple of seasons.
Yeah, I think if you want to make a coherent point about the Steelers coaching, I think the biggest thing that they did this season that they didn't do this season was they didn't acknowledge who they are. They coached like who they want to be instead of who they are. And they did it in some ways, but not like, they want to run the ball and play good defense. They didn't run the ball well at all. At all. They were in the 20s in success rate and in yards per attempt, EPA per play while rushing, things like that. Like they were not only a below average, they were a bad running team that ran the ball fourth most in the NFL this season. Like that can't continue. You have to pick one lane or the other. You either have to get better at it, or you have to acknowledge that you're not good at it and stop doing it. And so it doesn't sound like they have any interest in stopping doing it. So I mean, he pointed the offensive line out as like a potential highlight, as sort of like one kind of attempt at some optimism. And I don't even know if I share that. I think I still have probably just as many question marks as I have, full answers on the offensive line going forward right now.
Can you still, align with that thinking that their best path forward is to run the football, given that until they hit on that guy at quarterback, whenever they do, or do you think that they're behind the times in terms of their approach towards wanting the way they want to win?
This is actually really funny to me because I think there's this idea that like passing equals modern. And like, I think that actually ship has gone the other way, where like, I think the most modern NFL offenses run the ball a lot more than you think. Most of the teams that lead the league in rushing are the teams that are widely considered to be the best offenses. Teams like the 49ers, the Lions, the Eagles, the Ravens, like those teams are all running the ball a ton. And I think it also plays into scarcity at the quarterback position. There are only so many quarterbacks you want throwing the ball 30 times a game. There are very few of them, like 7, 8, maybe. Like the Eagles don't want Jalen Hurts throwing the ball that much. Like he's going to the Super Bowl. He's still very shielded as a quarterback in what he has to do and what he is allowed to do. They run the ball more than they do anything else. And so, like, I have two schools of thought. Like, you can obviously have a really good team with a running offense. The Ravens have it. The Eagles have it. The Lions have it. The 49ers have it. I'm sure there are more that I'm not thinking of right this second. You can obviously have a really good team with a running offense. I also would pick the Chiefs or the Bills to beat all of those teams most of the time. And the Steelers are in a conference with the Chiefs and the Bills. So while like I think focus on the running game is not a dumb idea because they don't have that quarterback and they don't have the ability to even attempt to get that quarterback. So that's the logical next thing. But when the time comes for that quarterback to arrive, the desire to be a running team can't supersede the development of the quarterback. You can't screw up another first-round pick. And, like, let's be honest, despite what Art said today, the Steelers screwed up Kenny Pickett. I don't know that Kenny Pickett was going to turn out better than he did, but the Steelers certainly could not be accused of putting him in the best possible position. Like, they did not do that. And so when the time comes, it's okay for now, I guess is the way I would answer that question. But when the time comes to get another quarterback, you have to prioritize the development of that player over your desire to be a running team.
And that's kind of why I don't remember if it was last week or how long everything just blends together at this time of the season. But I asked you if you thought that they were building a team that more stylistically that fit an NFC team, but playing in the AFC, and if that would be a problem down the road. Like, even if ideally they built themselves to be a Philadelphia Eagles, but we're still going to run into a quarterback like Mahomes, Allen, Burrow, Lamar down the road, if it would matter. I don't know that they necessarily have a choice until you hit on that guy, and there's no timetable for when that's actually going to happen. You just got to keep throwing darts at it. But I feel like this is more evidence of that, like I just, they don't have that guy at the quarterback position right now. They're trying to go through this model and rebuild or retool, whatever you want to call it. Similarly, building, I would say, trying to model the Philadelphia Eagles with what they're doing. But is this the right, I really don't know how to work, like, being that they're in the conference with the quarterbacks they are, is that the right approach? I don't know if they have another choice, but is that the right approach?
I don't know that they have another choice. Like, I think the right answer is no, but there is a better one, right? Like, no, being the Eagles, like, are you picking the Eagles to win the Super Bowl? Like, I'm not. I don't know how you could.
No,
I don't know. Like,
unfortunately not.
I don't know. Are you picking anybody in the AFC that does not have one of those dudes at quarterback to come out of the AFC in the next 5 years? Will a team other than the Ravens, the Bills, the Chiefs, and maybe the Bengals come out of the AFC in the next 5 years? Probably not. And is there even a quarterback that the Steelers could feasibly acquire that would change your opinion about that statement?
No. Nope. The
Probably
best
not.
case scenario,
Probably
we've
not.
talked about it,
Even
right? Is Dak Prescott. And what is that?
Trade up to one. They could trade up to one in 2026 and get Arch Manning. And I still don't think I would put them ahead of those other teams at that point. Now, maybe like by 5 years, 2028, 29. Okay, like Mahomes is starting to get a little older. I don't know. Like, I still like,
oh my God.
If you don't have one of those guys, you are a second-class citizen. You are a second-class citizen. And the best thing you can do as a second-class citizen is be really good at running the ball and hope you get lucky and you find a path like the Eagles did where you don't go up against one of those teams. But in the AFC, looks pretty bleak right now. Like, it just does.
It looks very bleak. I put out a post yesterday after the Chiefs. The game hadn't hit triple zeros yet, but it was over after they got a first down. And I tweeted, "What's the point?" And if, like, you're not a football fan, you're probably thinking, "Wow, this guy's like going through something right now." And no, it's literally it's a tweet about football where I'm wondering, like, even if we did the Steelers to build up to the best possible version that they possibly could be, what's the point? What's the point? And what's the point for a lot of fan bases in the NFL right now? It's such a bleak time to be. We went from a Patriots dynasty and without pause went right into a Chiefs dynasty.
Yeah. Now, maybe I think the Chiefs dynasty is probably on the back nine. I'll say that. Like, I think they've won more than they're going to win, but I don't like Lamar's not that old. Joe Burrow's not that old. Allen's not that old. Like, these guys are good. And it's it's one thing too, when there was Brady was a dominant dynasty, but also that was in the best period of NFL quarterback play ever. You had 10, 12 guys while Brady was quarterback that could have legitimately won a Super Bowl besides him. Now you have Mahomes, and there's only like 3 other guys that you feel like you can get there without him. Like, that's it. That's like there's a dearth of elite quarterbacks. Everybody wants one. Nobody has one. And if you don't have one, you're in big trouble. That is, and the Steelers are in big trouble. I would say that's if you want the headline from what Art Rooney said, is that the Steelers are not in a good place right now. And they know it, and there's not really much they can do about it.
And, the one thing that I will say that is at least kind of in their favor to this point is they haven't paid a dude at quarterback that wasn't worth paying, because I think what we have seen with this lack of elite level quarterback play, you're seeing guys in like those second and third tiers get paid more than they probably should be. Like, they are elite players at the position, and the Steelers haven't committed that type of contract to anybody at that position yet. Now, if they would have given Russell Wilson over $100 million or something like that, I still don't think that a 3-year, $90-ish to $100 million contract would have completely hamstrung them, but they haven't committed the big dollars to the position yet, so it kind of allows them to keep taking these shots to see if they do find something. I do think that big swing has to happen, hopefully in the 2026 draft. I don't see it this year. I don't see them finding their solution free agency or trade. That seems to be like the next logical point in time where that could happen.
Yeah, I mean, my expectation coming out of this at the quarterback position is they're going to sign Justin Fields to a 2-year deal. They're going to bring in a backup quarterback that looks a lot more like Justin Fields than Russell Wilson did. They're going to draft a quarterback in this year's draft, probably on day 3, and then they're going to go back in the draft in 2026 with a high pick and take some kind of big swing at the position. That is my expectation of where they're going forward at the quarterback, what their plan is at quarterback. Mm-hmm. I also think that jives with their reasoning on a lot of other things. If the big problem is quarterback, then it doesn't make sense to fire Mike Tomlin. It doesn't make sense to have big changes with your coaching staff. It doesn't make sense to, trade TJ Watt or do some of these other things people have talked about, because there's no way to fix it this year. I mean, we're here at the Senior Bowl talking to Jim Nagy today. He said there's not a quarterback in this class that would have been in the top 6 quarterbacks last year. So there's just just punt, call out Corliss Waitman, and we'll see you in 2026. I mean, that's the only thing there is to do. I mean, and so I think, yeah, it all makes. I don't want to say it's 100% the right thing to do, but I think logically it all flows together.
Okay. And you mentioned, not expecting wholesale changes for the coaching staff. I don't think anybody really expected wholesale changes, but I was curious to see what amount of turnover that we could have. We still don't know as we sit here right now. And again, you mentioned, we didn't know about Frisman Jackson being replaced by Zach Azzani until, February of last year. So maybe there still is some type of trickle down effect to take place within the coaching staff. But I almost was hoping that somebody would push back and say, okay, so not like sweeping changes, wholesale changes, but is there some level of expectation that there's going to be some type of movement within the coaching staff, just to see what he would have said?
Oh, 100% there will be some movement in the coaching staff. I don't like that's why people got Tomlin didn't say there were going to be big changes. He just said, yeah, of course there's going to be changes. And of course there will be changes. It's not going to be a coordinator. I don't think that would have happened by now.
Sure.
And so that's the only real thing that I feel like the time passing has told us that it's definitely not going to be a coordinator, or they would have done that already. I mean, and I'm also pretty sure that Mike Sullivan's not going to come back, but at what level are we talking about makes a difference? I mean, this is pretty minor stuff.
Mm-hmm. One of the coaches that reportedly his contract is up is Eddie Faulkner. Not sure that that's a coach that I would be moving on from. But I think that, one thing that Art brought up today was the evolution of the running back position. We've kind of touched on that already with the way that he views the run game and that being their path forward. But also talked about the obvious need at the position for the team after declining Najee Harris's option. With him, publicly acknowledging that obviously, I mean, we didn't need him to tell us that they declined Najee Harris' option. We knew that had happened, but we just keep checking boxes towards Najee being out the door, right? This is just, I think when he publicly says something like that, it's just a matter of this guy's not going to be back and we're adding to the room. Is that kind of how you took it as well, or no?
Yeah. I mean, I feel like all of the things he said about players and contracts were very, look, Art's a lawyer. I mean, I think, he was right down the middle about the 2 quarterbacks. He said would like to do some business with TJ Watt. He said George Pickens has some room to grow. We haven't really talked about a contract for him. He said some things about Najee Harris coming back. I don't feel like anyone should really be reading too much into any of those things, though, because, I mean, he said nice things about Kenny Pickett in the setting last year, and then a month and a half later, he was a Philadelphia Eagle. I just.
But your mind hasn't changed in that Najee Harris isn't coming back based off anything that he said.
No, I mean, I guess maybe I'll be slightly more open to the possibility, but I would be really surprised if Najee Harris is coming back.
what a couple other things that you mentioned within that was obviously the Pickens room to grow thing. Obviously eligible for a contract extension. We both said on here we don't expect them to hand out that extension this offseason. And then it's kind of a question is like, what is his reaction when that doesn't take place? Does he try to force his way out? Is he kind of okay with playing out the last year of his deal? And I really think that that's like a big one to watch for me just within this whole, like, because that could be an early domino to fall. If it is a George Pickens trade, you would think if they knew going into this offseason they were going to trade him, that they would want to do that prior to the NFL draft. So I'm curious to see how that plays out.
Yeah, I would think if they're going to do that, they would try to do it about the same time frame as Deontay's last year. You're right after the start of the new league year. It's a little complicated with trades. You can't make them until after the league year actually starts. But I mean, I don't think there's any rule about talking about them. You know, you can kind of feel people out, right?
Okay.
It's not like free agents where like you can't talk to them. You know what I mean? Like I think you can talk to teams about a potential trade. You just can't make it until the start of the league year. So like that's something that like when they get together at things like this and the combine, yeah, of course, like the big part of the business is the draft and the prospects, but they're doing all kinds of work when it comes to feeling out teams that might be interested in trading for George Pickens, among other, you know, that's absolutely things that are going on in these settings.
And the other was the TJ Watt extension. And we talked about that just last week and how, you know, we don't expect it to be as contentious or down to the wire as the last contract that he signed, like the week of playing the Buffalo Bills. But I think the timing of this is also very important because for the team, you'd like to think they'd like to get ahead of the Myles Garrett, Micah Parsons, but for the player, TJ might be better off waiting to see what happens with those guys' contracts before he signs a new deal to see what number they come at. So, I mean, I expect it to happen, but I think the timing of it is really going to be important.
Yeah, I'm interested. I don't know what TJ wants. Does he care about his number compared to those guys or not? You know, I don't know. And that probably goes into the process a lot because if he doesn't care, then he can go ahead and sign right now, probably. Like, I think, you know,
Yeah.
I can't imagine them being like super far apart in terms of the number. So, you know, it's different than the last time because TJ's play has not changed that much since, you know, from his first contract until the last extension he signed, he became the best edge rusher in the NFL. Since then, if anything, a slight decline maybe this year, but, you know, on the whole, he's basically the same guy. And so I don't think the negotiations should be nearly as contentious as the last time around because the same basic blueprint should be in place.
Yeah. Yeah, that's absolutely correct. And
but it depends on what he wants. If he cares strongly about beating their number, then he probably needs to wait.
Yeah, absolutely. I do want to dedicate the last few minutes here just because you are at the Senior Bowl. You mentioned Jim Nagy talking today, brought up the quarterback stuff where he views the guys in this class as opposed to obviously like last year where we had 6 go in the first round. But anything else to take away from Jim Nagy today? Because it seemed like just following your feed and stuff, there was a lot of good stuff.
Yeah. So talked to Nagy today. Good stuff about the running back class, man. He said there are a ton of good running backs in this year's class. Said there are 30 players with a draftable grade at the running back position. That's absurd. It's been half that in some of these recent classes. And also said it's really strong at defensive tackle. I asked him about what you were talking about earlier about Saquon Barkley, Derrick Henry, the shifting idea about the position of running back in the NFL and what that means. And he said, yeah, he does think that teams are going to be a little bit less hesitant because of what you've seen from Derrick Henry and Saquon Barkley on second contracts and also how strong this class is, that teams are going to be a little less hesitant to invest in the running back position this time around. From me, like the big takeaway from that conversation is like Ashton Janty's a top 10 pick. Like that's what I think right now for sure. I don't think I see the Steelers really entertaining the idea of running back in the first round after things didn't go that well with Najee Harris and also just the number of needs they have. It'd be really hard for me to imagine them getting to that point with all those other boxes checked And I do think that for the Steelers, the depth of the running back position says wait more than it says jump early. But I think there are a lot of teams that are going to see this running back class, see what teams this year did with their free agent running backs and say, this is actually not a crazy investment for us. It is possible to sign them to a second contract and still have success. Maybe not highly in the first round for all these guys, but I think day 2 of this draft is just going to be a running back bonanza.
Yeah, well, that's what I was going to say is I feel like day 2 is the sweet spot for the Steelers specifically too, and maybe pretty much every team is viewing it that same way because I'm just thinking about back end of round 1. OJ Genty's already off the board. Is that the spot for like a Caleb Johnson or Travion Henderson? Because I think from a value perspective, probably go a different direction than just wait for day 2 for like a Quinshawn Judkins or somebody as opposed to taking the first round guy.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. I think that sort of aligns with the Steelers' values and you know, them not picking up Najee's contract extension sure seems like they're not going to be one of these teams that makes this shift in mindset about running back, but maybe we'll see. I don't know. Maybe they'll change their mind. But I think the Steelers will probably wait, but I think a lot of teams are going to dive into this running back pool probably earlier than people think.
Okay. Well, that could be better than for, what the board looks like for the Steelers then if they don't go that route early, but other teams do. Maybe there is, a wide receiver that drops further than we expect. Maybe there is one of those defensive tackles that you're talking about as well, which, like you just kind of alluded to there, feel like that's maybe the deepest group along with running back out of this draft class is defensive tackle, which is good news for the Steelers.
Yeah, their needs, except for wide receiver, I don't think it's that great of a wide receiver draft class compared to the last couple we've had, which were just exceptional. This one just feels more average, maybe even a little bit below average. But, yeah, D tackle's really deep. There's a number of guys here at the Senior Bowl that I think are really interesting. We can get into those as we kind of go through the week. I don't want to spend, like, a ton of time talking about individual guys. But, like, I just think in general the consensus is deep at running back and defensive line. Horrendous at quarterback, not particularly great at wide receiver. I think there's a number of good corners in this class too. But so I think the Steelers' needs are going to be pretty well met by this draft class, especially defensive line and running back.
Not that I disagreed with the statement, but I did have to laugh when I saw you post the quote from Jim Nagy about the quarterback class. Just as I'm thinking, like, for the guys that are there, right, like a Jaylen Milaro, Jackson Dart, the guys that are there to like see or hear that quote, and they're just thinking, what the heck? Like, what are we doing?
Yeah, I mean, I love his honesty. And I think the NFL teams like his honesty too. And I think that's why they appreciate Jim as an evaluator and why everybody is here.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Was there anything else to take away from Jim Nagy today?
Not from Nagy, I don't think, but we talked to Jaylen Milaro. He had an interesting day today, so let's cover that.
Okay.
Jaylen Milaro has Kenny Pickett-sized hands. You hate to see it.
Yeah,
this is going to be the conversation. He's actually his are an eighth of an inch bigger than Kenny's, 8 3/4 inches. I think Kenny's here were 5/8. Does that sound right? Yeah. But then his got bigger by the combine.
Yeah.
I don't know that I have the mental bandwidth to have like a whole nother like quarterback hand size off season, but like I feel like we're gonna have another quarterback hand size off season.
Yeah, because I mean, if there's one guy at that position within this class that we're going to talk about as Steelers fans, it's probably that guy. So, like, we've already touched on him a little bit last week when DB was on here. We're going to have to talk about the performance that he has at the Senior Bowl and as we get to the combine. Like, yeah, if we're monitoring the quarterback position at all in the 2025 NFL draft for the Steelers specifically, I think it is
It starts with him.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, it starts with it. Like him, Ewers, Dart, so on and so forth. And so, yeah. And also, I just think, like, you look at the player of Jaylen Milaro, and you're thinking, well, even if he can't throw, he's going to be a really dynamic runner. Like, even if he can't read a defense, we can still use this guy. But then you bring in, but he's going to fumble a whole bunch. I think it does start to poke some holes into the whole like theory of him. I also don't know how much, like, I know there some NFL teams that care a lot about that kind of thing. I also know that there are some teams like the Pittsburgh Steelers that do not give a rat's ass how big his hands are. They just don't. And so I'll be interested to see where this goes forward from here, if this does become a thing that hurts his draft stock, because at the same time, we're there's not going to be any separation between these two things that are happening. The first thing that's happening is we've got his hand size measurements public. Everybody knows now. The second thing that's happening is these teams are getting Jaylen Milaro one-on-one for the first time. And let me tell you, he's a very impressive guy. Like, extremely well-spoken, humble, smart. He won the, I think it's called the Campbell Trophy, which is like basically a combination of academics and on-field excellence for college football. It's called like the academic Heisman, basically.
Okay.
You can really tell. Like, this is a guy who is smart, says the right things, but also has a personality. Like, he wasn't just a robot. Somebody asked him about a player comp, like someone compared him to Lamar Jackson, and he kind of thought about it for a second, and he smiled and said, well, that was very nice of them. I just thought that was such a perfect way to handle that, because what are you supposed to say? Yeah, I'm as good as Lamar Jackson. You look like a jerk. But if you say no, then you look like, it's kind of a gotcha question, and I thought he handled it really well. Yeah, and just say like, took it as a compliment without really acknowledging and saying, yeah, I think I'm that good, right? And so I think teams are going to be really impressed by Jaylen Milaro, the person. So, like, we'll see. We'll see how the week goes. I don't know if we're going to see Milaro stock up or down. I still think he's a first-round pick, and not only is he a first-round pick, I think probably the Steelers would have to move up to get him. That's what I've been saying. I'm going to keep saying it until either I look smart or I'm wrong, and then I'll stop saying it and hope you all forgot.
Well, for as mentally impressive as it sounds like he is, physically impressive too. I mean, the dude is built like a truck at the quarterback position. So he's one of the more intriguing players for me to watch. I don't want the Steelers to invest in him just because I'm not sure that this is a good landing spot for him, and I don't want to do that. But I am curious to just watch how not just this process plays out for him, but his entire career.
Yeah, for sure.
Alan, other than in Mobile, Alabama currently, tell the people they can find you.
At a Saunders _PGH on X, Instagram, TikTok, and Blue Sky. PGH Steelers Now sites account, SteelersNow.com. Go there, read the word so I can get paid. Promo code Allen10, SN Plus, all the good stuff. All the juiciest bits I get from Mobile going there. So make sure you get that. Also, ad-free, all the best stuff from DB. You know the drill. Go sign up. Subscribe to the YouTube channel. That's free and really helps us out. And we are like 80-some people away from 15,000. So, let's make it happen. Let's get it done this week.
Yeah, it was 87 when I checked earlier, and I was fully prepared to make a Sidney Crosby reference, but it's actually at 84 now, which is good. I'm not going to be upset about gaining subscribers. So 84. I don't want to say the 84 that comes to mind first. Who else? Oh, Cordero Patterson, I guess. Not that people want to hear that name right now, but I refuse to use the other 84's name that people think of first and foremost when it comes to the Steelers. So that's there you go. We are Jeremy Tooman subscribers away from 15K at the Steelers Afternoon Drive as the drive continues towards that. So be sure to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell. Leave us a 5-star review and subscribe if you're listening somewhere else, Apple, Spotify, wherever your podcast from. We are there. Just search Steelers Afternoon Drive, and then you'll find me everywhere. Zachary Smith, PGH, for Alan Saunders, and myself. Thanks for jumping in.
Mike Tomlin.
There you go. That's how many subscribers we are. Away from 15K is Mike Malarkey. But until then, for Alan Saunders and myself, thanks for jumping in and taking another ride on the Steelers Afternoon Drive.